So in this video, I just wanted to give a brief overview of the home lab setup. If you look to the right, what you will see is a Pfsense virtual machine. If you look to the left, you'll see the admin portal for the Pfsense firewall, currently up and running. I'm already logged in. And if you look back to the right, you'll see that I have a WAN interface configured as well as two LAN interfaces. The WAN IP is coming from the bridged adapter configuration in VirtualBox from my home router. So essentially, my gateway is directly connected to the virtual machine and is able to distribute IP addresses that way. You can see that the IP is being distributed through DHCP, and the IP is 192.168.0.151 for the WAN. Now, as for the LAN network, at least the eCorp one, you'll see that I have configured that on its own subnet of 10.0.1.1 with a subnet mask of 24. And for the attack LAN, you'll see that it's on the 10.0.3.1 subnet. I'll explain more about why I configured it that way, probably in future videos, but just to give an overview of what's configured here specifically in Pfsense. As you can see, this is the default dashboard. You can see my three interfaces here. You've got WAN, you've got the eCorp LAN, and you've got the attack LAN. The attack LAN is going to have a Kali Linux box on it, which I'm going to use to simulate attacks for this lab. As you can see, it gives you some basic information here, like the DNS server, time settings and whatnot. All this is stuff that I haven't fully configured just yet, but it is a work in progress. I guess where I will start, since I've already configured most of the basic stuff, is let's take a look at the firewall rules. So if you go to firewall rules, there aren't any rules configured for the WAN yet, but for the eCorp LAN, you'll see that there are a few rules, including the default ones, which are the first two. There's the anti-lockout rule, which is an out-of-box rule configured by the Pfsense administrators to basically prevent you from being locked out of Pfsense. As you can see, traffic from ports 443 and 80 are allowed, so that you're able to access this admin portal here. Because if this was blocked, I would essentially be locked out of Pfsense. And then, of course, there's the default allow LAN to any rule. But everything below that, so really everything below the IPv4 and IPv6 allow all for the LAN rule are rules that I configured. So here we are with the eCorp to eCorp rule that's essentially saying any internal traffic amongst devices that are in the eCorp subnet where the eCorp LAN can communicate with each other. Pretty straightforward there. The rule after that is going to be the eCorp LAN being able to communicate with the attack LAN, which if you did read the README file that I have in GitHub, I would, of course, only do that for lab purposes, because obviously, if you have an attacker in your environment, you don't want to intentionally give them access to anything, really. So I think that goes without saying, but for the purposes of the lab, it's kind of good to be in both the the blue team and the red team seat. I guess you would call that purple teaming, but anyways, the rule after that is essentially saying allow devices on the eCorp subnet to communicate to the internet. And the way that I actually have this rule set up is if I click here, you'll see that I create an alias called RFC 1918, which is the standard name for private IP addresses, which will be IP addresses in the 10.0.0.0 subnet. I believe it's 162. Something, and then there's 192.168.0.1, and then I believe there's 172.16. May have gotten those incorrectly, and I apologize for that. But essentially, the alias that I can always go to and take a look at what I configured already, but you'll see essentially that this alias is tied to all of the known private IP spaces that I'm aware of. And as you can see, the destination here is that alias, but it's actually an invert match. So essentially what this is saying is, yes, you want to allow traffic from any protocol IPv4, with the source being the eCorp subnet, but instead of allowing that to go to the private IP addresses, you want to invert that so that it goes to any address that isn't a private IP address, which would be public addresses. And so that's how the logic for this rule is set. I click save even though I didn't make any changes. All right, so, and then there is the default just for, general best practices. It's always good to pretty much block anything else that you don't really want to allow at the very bottom, at least for Pfsense anyway, because another general rule for Pfsense is that the first rule is always going to take precedence. So the first rule will be processed first before the rest of the rules underneath it will even be considered. But anyways, yeah, that's a little bit about the firewall rules that I have set up for the eCorp LAN specifically. And then I do have a few for the attack LAN as well. I want the attack LAN, of course, to be able to access eCorp for labbing purposes. I want the attack LAN to not have access to the internet. And I also want to prevent the Kali Linux VM from being able to impact other hosts on the home network. And so essentially, I have a rule that essentially says, any internet traffic that's coming from the WAN interface will be blocked or, prevented from, or I'm sorry, any traffic between, the Kali Linux box and then going out to the internet, it won't affect any of my actual devices that I have that's technically a part of this bridged home network that I have right now, just to prevent any interference of sorts while I'm actually doing like red team based attacking and whatnot in my environment. And so yeah, that pretty much explains the firewall rules that I have set up, at least for now. Of course, I may come in here and make some additional changes later on. Let's see, what else do we have here? Yeah, I did mention aliases earlier. So I only have one alias, and this is what I was talking about earlier about having the RFC 1918 alias configured for all of the private IP hosts, or I guess, I'm sorry, not host spaces, but address spaces. So you got 10.0.0.0, 172.16.0.0, 169.254, which is one I think I missed earlier, and then 127.0.0.0, which is loopback addressing, and then the most common that you'll see in home networks, 192.168. So that is the alias I have set up. I also have some DHCP leases, of course, there's only one right now. I have not set up the other one for the attack LAN yet, but essentially the Windows 11 device that you are looking at right now actually has a static IP that I configured. But it's also, the eCorp subnet also has a DHCP lease that is being pushed out to it for any other devices that join the eCorp subnet. So, let's see what else. Other than that, that is pretty much the gist of what I have configured so far. I am still fairly new to how Pfsense works, but I am slowly but surely getting equipped to how it works and whatnot. I also have the DNS resolver service set up so that essentially any devices that adopt a lease, on either of the different LANs can also be resolved through DNS. So that's a pretty useful tool to have. I haven't set up any VPNs or anything yet, but I am certainly looking into doing that in future lab sessions when I have the time. Let's see what else. Of course, I've already configured the different interfaces and whatnot, so no need to take a look at that. But yeah, I didn't want to make this video too long, especially when there's already a pretty detailed README that goes through each of the steps I take so far. I just wanted to make this quick uh, if you call 10 minutes quick video, just talking about my experience so far, what I've set up. And yeah, that's pretty much going to be it. For anyone who took the time to watch this video, I truly appreciate it as I continue to progress through my cybersecurity journey and just continue to learn and lab and just pick things apart, break things, fix things. Yeah, it's gonna be one heck of a time. But again, thank you for watching, for whoever took the time to watch, and hopefully you'll watch some of my other videos as well. All right.